Infidelity. WGTK gives you Let's Talk with Dr. Stan Frager. From relationship problems to family feuds, he's got all the advice and expert help you'll need. Now, here's Dr. Stan Frager.
Good evening. You're not listening to Dr. Stan tonight. You're listening to Dr. Eli Karam. Dr. Stan taking a much-needed night off. He'll be back next week, but we have a great show for you tonight. Hour 1, we're talking all about technology and relationships. In Hour 2, we'll have a mailbag taking all your questions about relationship health, families, couples, intimacy, everything you want. You'll want to call us 571-0970. Again, Eli Karam. I'm assistant professor at the Kent School of Social Work in the Marriage and Family Therapy Department, and have been a guest. And thank Dr. Stan for having me in, being a part of this Sunday night family. And this first hour, we're going to be joined by a colleague of mine from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Dr. Hertlein. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Hertlein. She's an associate professor in the Department of Marriage and Family Therapy, like me, a licensed marriage and family therapy at UNLV. She received her master's in marriage and family therapy from Purdue University Calumet and her PhD from Virginia Tech. She has co-edited a book on interventions in couples treatment, interventions for clients with health concerns, and is a co-editor on a book about infidelity, which we'll speak about tonight, especially internet infidelity. Recently, she served as a co-author on systemic sex therapy and a co-author on a clinician's guide to systemic sex therapy. So that is her expertise, and we look forward to having Kat. Are you on the line with this, Kat?
I am.
Great. Welcome to the Sunday Night Family. We're talking all about technology and relationships. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. What's the weather like there in Las Vegas?
It is 93 degrees right now. It is 5 p.m.
Yeah, that's right. And we are talking about technology. I guess the first question is, both you and me, we have one foot in academia, being professors, and also we have active private practices working with couples and families as licensed marriage and family therapy therapist. I'm curious, what type of presenting problems related to technology are you seeing, and what do you think licensed marriage and family therapies are seeing nationwide as far as couples and technology?
Actually, one of the biggest things I see in my practice is couples coming in with one member of the couple saying that their partner is carrying on kind of online relationships or is engaging in infidelity, and the other partner in the couple says, no, I'm not doing it. And seems to be the crux of the issue, seems to be around the definition of what infidelity is, because a lot of the relationships that one partner is participating in are occurring through online media or through cell phones or other kinds of technology, and it's viewed as a breach of contract to one partner, but not a breach of contract to the other partner.
Right, kind of going back to this old myth that, well, I didn't touch the other person, so there was nothing physical going on, so it's not cheating. But you and I know that's not the case. How would you define, or what would constitute online or internet infidelity, just for our listeners to make sure we're all on the same page?
Right. For me, it really comes down to what the arrangement was with the couple. So I will actually sit with the couple and say, hey, well, what was your arrangement around, infidelity, and whether or not you constituted that behavior as a breach of the agreement. In my view, if there's one person who feels that the relationship contract was breached or broken in any way, then infidelity has occurred, kind of regardless of if the other person agrees with it or not. Because you have to recognize that sense of betrayal accompanies so many other emotions that you're really not going to win by trying to convince the other partner that it wasn't infidelity. I mean, you're just not going to win. It's just not going to happen. So if it feels like there was a breach in the relational contract, whatever that breach is, involving a third person, okay, then infidelity has occurred. The other thing that we know about infidelity is that it seems to be characterized by involvement with not only a third person, but I will say an identifiable third person. So someone who you can point to repeatedly and say, well, here's the person that I have a problem with, that you're connecting with online or whatever. Certainly there are cases where individuals will kind of jump around from person to person and get kind of sexual responses from a variety of people. And so in those cases, you might be having kind of an internet infidelity problem as well as kind of an internet sex addiction problem. And we can talk about the differences between the two of those in a little bit. But generally, infidelity is looked at by that breach of a relational contract in whatever way that's defined. And in most cases, there's this identifiable third person that causes the problem.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. We'll have a lot of people say, well, you know, I was going to an online chat room, and I did not know who that third person was. It was a fantasy. It was in my head. I don't know who that person is, so it's not a real person. It's just an extension of my viewing pornography, my masturbatory fantasy. So it's not a real person. How would you respond to that?
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing I would do is is this within the context of a couple, I'm imagining? Someone is trying to defend their position?
Sure.
Okay. So the first thing I would say is kind of regardless of whether it was fantasy or this real person, the bottom line is your partner's hurt, and your partner feels like it was a betrayal, okay? So whatever that fantasy is, we need to kind of manage your partner's feelings, and we need to work through that. The second piece is there someone who is maybe a type of fantasy that this person is seeking out? You know, are you looking for the same types of people or the same types of communication over and over and over again that in some ways could constitute some kind of identifiable quality? You know, so maybe you're talking with different people, but maybe they're all from one region of the country, or they're all, you know, online at a particular time or whatever. Is there kind of a grouping of characteristics that makes this almost you constructing this into a third persona, so to speak?
Yeah.
So that I would be interested in finding that out.
Another person, we're getting some calls in. Again, you can call us here if you have a question around technology and relationships or infidelity or cyber cheating for Dr. Kat Hertlein. You can call us at the studio at 502-571-0971. Question coming in. Somebody says, if you masturbate or if you touch yourself during this online experience, but not the other person, do you consider that still cheating? And again, I think these are questions, people trying to justify their behavior to themselves, but some people will do that. Well, I didn't touch anybody, and it was not a problem. It was just an extension of my, fantasy life or my computer life.
Mm-hmm. If their partner would consider it cheating, then yes, I would consider it cheating. Right. Here's the thing about the Internet that's, I think, really different. First of all, what we used to consider infidelity was just physical interaction with another person. And that was true up until about the 1980s. And then there was kind of a shift from the middle 1980s into the 1990s suggesting that, hey, there's this thing called emotional infidelity, where if you're kind of spending time and putting some energy into something else other than your partner to the exclusion of your primary partner and it's conducted in secrecy, then that would constitute an emotional breach in the relationship and, therefore be emotional infidelity. The other thing about the Internet is there is this quality about it called approximation, which means that the Internet is getting better and better all the time at approximating real-world circumstances. And so while you might say, well, yeah, I haven't exactly touched this other person, the problem you'll have with that logic is that the Internet is so good at basically approximating a real-life situation that it's almost like you did. And your partner is probably not going to see it that way. At least the clients that I've worked with, I've heard that claim a lot of times. Two people will come in and one will say, well, yeah, I was touching myself or I was masturbating or I was doing these things, but I never met in person with her. And I will tell you that argument has never mattered to the other partner who's been hurt.
Right, and I think you're pointing out one of the keys that we find. Certainly, you need to be transparent with your partner about all of this. And if it's something you're not comfortable, your partner sitting there being with you while you're doing, it's probably not a good idea. You're probably entering into some gray area. When we get back, actually we have a couple more minutes, maybe you can tell me, what do you think the key technology in the Internet or social networking or whatever have you that you're seeing, and marriage and family therapists across the country are seeing, is leading to the most problems in this Internet infidelity? Are there any website or program more than others that you're seeing pop up?
I actually don't see any websites necessarily that are popping up that are being considered problematic. I've heard a lot about the Ashley Madison site, but, frankly, if you're looking for love online and you're married, you don't have to restrict yourself to Ashley Madison. There are a number of places.
Tell our viewers what Ashley Madison is. You and I know, but let's make sure.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Ashley Madison is a website that markets itself so to people who are interested in conducting an affair without their partner knowing.
All right. We will leave on that. We'll be back in a couple minutes, continuing our talk with technology and relationships. Dr. Kat Hertlein. You're listening to Let's Talk.
Dr. Vine, Dr. Frager. You found Let's Talk with Dr. Stan Frager. Dr. Stan Frager is standing by to give you insight on issues that matter most to you. Call now, 571-0970.
Dr. Eli sitting in for Dr. Stan tonight, here with my guest, Dr. Kat Hertlein from University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We're talking about technology and relationships. Before the break, Dr. Hertlein, we were talking about the internet and internet infidelity and how just the types of technology is so different now. And you and I don't give away to our listeners, are our mid-30s, so we've grown up kind of in this generation of new technology, new media. But it used to be when you were having a breach in a relationship or an infidelity, you didn't have so many options, as it were, so to speak. So how has this new media changed couples, families, intimate relationships?
I think that it changes it in two main ways. I think new technologies change both the structure of relationships, and I think it changes the process of them. And what I mean by that is when it changes the structure of relationships, it forces couples and families even to redefine what their rules are, right, around what's acceptable to put online, what's acceptable to post, who it's acceptable to talk to, what acceptable behavior is. It forces us to redefine our boundaries around our systems, right? So, what people are we going to let in to our world when we post and advertise on certain things, when we get cell phones, how are we putting boundaries around our time? It forces us to redefine our roles as well. Our roles both in a couple's relationship, like who's going to be the person who's going to be maybe being responsible for the management in the household if both people have cell phones, or who's going to be doing particular roles in the relationship. And in changes to process, it really forces us to redefine what intimacy means, right? What it means to be close to someone and how that looks in a relationship. It's also really changed our relationship initiation and formation processes. A lot of people are meeting online now. They're meeting their partners online. Relationships are starting off in a very different way. There's been a whole bunch of research done related to the social influences of the internet and how people meet, but part of what they talk about in the literature is that people use dating features in a way they never were able to before in terms of initiating relationships. So maybe if you're someone who's totally into blondes all the time, you don't necessarily get to see that online. And so there are people that you talk to online that you would never talk to offline, and so kind of changes the way that we open up relationships. And then it also changes the way that we maintain relationships. How do we connect with people during a day? What do we use our phones and our emails for? Is it for connecting with our partners? What happens when your partner has a cell phone and that they're on email all day but they're not contacting you? What does that do to the relationship? So those are probably the two main ways, the changes to the structure and the changes to process of relationships that occurs through the advances in new media and technology.
Yeah, I like how you say that, because it could be, you're right, how the relationship started, it started through even online means or through this different way. So what about for couples that started out face-to-face and all this new technology has come across throughout their relationship? Talk more about how to have that talk about what is acceptable for us as far as online, what we should post, how we should communicate, and what is not. Because you're really talking about a dialogue that needs to start early in a relationship and I guess kind of adjust or mature as the technology does. How would you talk to a couple about starting that dialogue? We have people out there listening, wanting to talk to their partner about that.
That's a great question. In fact, one of the things that I'm often even surprised by now in my private practice are when premarital couples come in and, everybody's in love and everything is happy, and I say, so what's your definition of infidelity? And they kind of look at me like, obviously, they're not supposed to be touching someone else. And I was like, well, what about the Internet? And couples are often startled by that, because even couples in today's world who are initiating relationships in this current climate are still not having those conversations about the role that the Internet plays within their relationship formation and withholding their friendships. So one of the ways that I would have couples start that conversation is to actually first talk about what you think is going well in your relationship with regard to technology, what things you think are appropriate, before kind of launching in and saying, hey, here are the rules and here are how things need to change. It's entirely possible that you're already comfortable with your partner's use of the Internet, use of new media, use of social networking, whatever, and because you're comfortable with it, you haven't necessarily brought up a conversation about it. And unfortunately, by the time people get to my private practice office, things were fine. They never had this conversation, and it wasn't until something erupted that they realized they had to have another conversation about it.
I like what you're saying. You're saying be preventative in the fact that before you even get married, this is a talk people should have. It's like, what is your relationship with social media, the Internet, and how will it impact our relationship, to get them talking about it early on?
Absolutely. What are the rules around usage? Who's invited in, who isn't? Here's the thing that the Internet and new media does. It introduces people who are known to you into your relationship, but it also introduces people who are not known to you in a very different way than we've ever had before, okay? So you have to have some conversation about what are going to be the boundaries and rules before you even kind of get into the relationship. Now, the other thing that I found is even if you're a couple who's already established, and so you're thinking, oh gosh, I haven't set this down with my partner, one of the things that I found is a lot of couples who've been together a long time haven't gone back and revisited their contract. And I just think in general, if you've been a couple for a long time, it's always good to just kind of go back and revisit your relationship contract, because people change and relationships change. So maybe this show for people might serve that opportunity. Hey, we've been married a long time. Maybe we need to go back with the advances in new media and try to figure out how our family life fits into that. So I think that might be one of the things that helps couples.
Right. It's a busy. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's a busy world. I mean, couples often, with if they have kids, running their families, a career, they're often operating on out-of-date knowledge. So you're right. Revisiting this contract, as you call it, having that information. We might not know where our partner's been doing on the Internet, what type of online friends. And rule of thumb is generally if there is a third partner, your partner has a friend, and you can usually meet that friend. And when you meet them face-to-face, it takes some of the worry out of it. But the thing with online relationships, sometimes you can't meet or have not laid eyes on that other person, and that makes it hard if you are the partner trying to support your spouse and having these online relationships. So you think to meet the person when you can is important, or to at least know who those people they're talking to online.
Right. Yeah, because so much of that online interaction is going to be away from the other partner. A lot of research that's been done recently with cell phones, particularly looking at how dyads operate in public when someone is using a cell phone, they found that one person who's on the phone will talk maybe with their head down a little bit, or do some kind of other behavioral things to try to keep that conversation private. And as the call goes on long enough, the other person in the dyad actually gets up and leaves.
We'll come right back. We're talking with Kat Hertlein on Let's Talk.
Let's Talk with Dr. Stan Frager, helping you make sense of life's daily challenges and much more on 970 WGTK.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without pride. Now I want to understand. Doctor, my eyes.
Dr. Eli sitting in tonight for Dr. Stan. We're talking technology and relationships with Dr. Kat Hertlein of UNLV. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, a professor. And in the last segment, Kat, we were talking about how to start this dialogue about technology in your relationship with couples. Let's talk more about boundaries. And how a couple should talk about, okay, this is what we're comfortable with doing online as far as posting, as far as sharing, and this is what we're not. How do I have that discussion with my wife about boundaries online?
That's a great question. I think the first thing I want everyone to know is that it's more than just the internet too. It's larger aspects of new technology and new media. For example, BlackBerries really do affect people's relationships, smartphones, whatever. There was some research done on it a couple years ago that talked about how it's great to have that access in terms of a BlackBerry. However, couples have noticed that it really takes away from feeling connected because there are more times in which you can be interrupted, right? So I think the first thing that you should know if you're going to have this conversation is that it's not just about the internet. It is about new technology in every way that it's affecting your family. Smartphones, internet, and any other types of social media.
Great.
The second thing that I would say kind of about the boundaries is, again, to start with what you think is working well and where your comfort level is, okay? So if I feel comfortable allowing, myself to post things and knowing that, my partner will be able to see them and I'm comfortable with what I'm posting, then that should give me a good sense that I'm posting things that are appropriate. If there was some kind of issue where you felt like you were posting something that you didn't want your partner to see, then that would suggest that there is this boundary problem that has to be discussed and navigated within the couple's relationship. There might be certain people who are off limits. I know for a lot of the couples that I work with, it seems to be kind of an ex-partner that people don't want things shared. And that ex-partner can see things if you post that online, even if you're not directly communicating with them and sending them these pictures necessarily. So I think there has to be a conversation, too, about, okay, well, what items are appropriate to post or what topics are appropriate to post. And then secondly, to whom are these people or to whom can these objects or items or photos or whatever be okay posted, right? So you've got the items that you have to talk about, and you have to have a conversation about the people or groups of people. I was talking to another friend of mine who said that she asked someone not to post a picture of her because it would reveal that she was at a location that she was not telling other people that she was at. And so the person who posted this picture didn't share it with the other people. They blocked the other people, but then they tagged her on Facebook, and so it got put on her page, and it got displayed anyway, and it caused a bigger problem in the family. Okay, so we have to be thoughtful about not only what we're posting, but about who might see the information. And I think if couples start with those two areas, a what and a who, that gives you a better way to start establishing those boundaries.
We'll have some people listening to us also that says, hey, this technology, yeah, it can cause some problems, but it's really great too. Let's give some credit. How do you think this technology, the internet, new media has positively impact couples and relationships?
It's fantastic in a lot of ways. You can communicate with extended family. There's some recent research done on communicating with people at a greater geographical distance, in fact, transnationally. There's also an opportunity to connect with people during the day at any time of day, so you don't have these time constraints on communication. It's not like, well, I have to wait until my sister who's in New York 3 hours away wakes up in the morning before I call her, and send her this. I can just send her a quick email before I go to bed.
We're heading to break, Kat. We'll come back in a second. We're talking to Dr. Kat Hertlein. You can reach her at www.kathertlein, that's HERTLEIN.com.
Calling Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Frager. You found Let's Talk with Dr. Stan Frager. Dr. Stan Frager is standing by to give you insight on issues that matter most to you. Call now, 571-0970.
Dr. Eli back with you here with Dr. Kat Hertlein, licensed marriage and family therapist. We're talking about technology and relationships. And Kat, you were talking about disclosing to your partner and what you need to do if you got a technology in your relationship. You want to make sure your partner knows about it.
Right. Yeah, we talked, we're also talking at the end there about some of the great things about technology. And one of them is that it seems that couples who are in relationships that are facilitated primarily online actually have higher levels of commitment. And a lot of researchers think that's because what the Internet allows us to do is really disclose a lot to another person because we don't feel like we're being judged as much. And so one of the things that I would always encourage couples to do is to take whatever disclosures you feel like saying online off the computer and bring them to your partner to be able to continue to develop that commitment and that trust within those offline relationships.
It is strange. I've worked with people, too, and they will tell me, yeah, I just really, I actually can express myself better when I'm chatting with somebody than I am face-to-face. And you'd like to believe anything you could write on a computer screen, you should be able to tell your partner or your significant other face-to-face.
Right. That's the idea, but a lot of people can, and that's where they get into this kind of slippery slope. They connect with someone online, and next thing you know, the relationship has grown in such a way that they didn't expect, and part of that is because they feel like they can be whoever they want to be online and not necessarily with their partner.
Yes. All right, let's talk about too much of anything in a relationship can take you out of balance. So lots of people will come in and say, I work so hard during the day, and yes, I'm with my kids, and, once my kids go down, I just want to sit, and I just want to get on my message boards. I just want to get on my Facebook. And a lot of partners come home, and they feel neglected because their partner is on the technology, on the Internet. So tell me, what kind of perimeter or boundaries should we put around? How much is too much as far as being on the Internet, and when does Internet addiction kind of come in, and how is that different than just spending too much time on the computer?
Mm-hmm. Internet addiction is characterized by the amount of hours spent on the Internet. Unfortunately, we don't have really good numbers on that. Some research suggests that Internet addicts are staying online, over 11 hours a week. Some people are saying it's closer to 40. So usually, though, it is characterized by the amount of time online. Another issue that is related to Internet addiction are kind of the physical symptoms. Do you have this tolerance or this withdrawal? Do you need to, maybe when you start getting online at the beginning of the week, does it take you to a place where you have to spend more and more time by the end of the week to kind of feel like that you've accomplished something? When you're not around something with Internet service, is it particularly distressing to you? Another characteristic is the presence or absence of some of the other addictive properties. One of the things that the Internet provides is the speed and the accessibility and just the potency at which you can get the information are really, really attractive. When you compare that to Internet infidelity, it's not about the speed of information or how accessible some information is. It's about the relationship and the sexual connection with someone else that are actually the factors that kind of drive the usage more than the speed. So that's something to pay attention to. In terms of working with families or with couples where they're deciding whether or not someone has kind of an Internet addiction problem, one of the key things you want to ask yourself is whether or not that behavior of being online actually interferes with or takes away from your daily family and couple functioning. So if you notice your partner complaining a lot more about maybe your online gaming, that might be something to look at. If you notice that your children are getting out of bed and the first place they come to look for you is maybe the computer because they know that that's where you always sit, that might be an indicator that there might be an issue and that you're spending a lot of your time on there.
I'm glad you bring that up because we think of, a lot of people think Internet addiction, you're thinking of pornography, but we're not saying that's just not the case. It could be anything. It could be shopping. It could be gaming.
Absolutely. There are actually, I think, three distinct things. That there's Internet addiction, there's Internet sex addiction, and then there's Internet infidelity. So, for example, with Internet sex addiction, you still have the speed, accessibility, and potency of information being factors, but they're specifically related to sex and pornography. They are not related to just the speed of information or having that rush of being online and being able to buy things from Amazon at midnight.
We're coming back. We have one more segment with Dr. Kat Hertlein. You can find her at www.kathertlein.com. That's KATHERTLEIN.com. You're listening to Let's Talk. This is Dr. Eli. Give us a call, 571-0970.
9 with Dr. Stan Frager, helping you make sense of life's daily challenges and much more on 970 WGTK.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the year and the slow parade of fears without pride. Now I want to understand.
Dr. Eli Karam sitting in for Dr. Stan Frager this evening. He'll be back next week. If you missed Dr. Stan, I'll remind you to check out www.frager.com, and you can see tips from Tony and Dr. Stan on there. Always updated, a very good website, and he will be back next week. And we're in our last segment with Dr. Kat Hertlein, licensed marriage and family therapist. We've been speaking this hour about technology and relationships, kind of the dark side, internet infidelity, when there's been a breach of trust. Okay, Kat, let's say our listeners out there has been something like this in their relationship. Either somebody has disclosed something inappropriately online, an emotional disclosure, or has been spending too much time on, adult websites or something like that. The couple agrees they have a problem. They need professional help. Tell us how a licensed marriage and family therapist could help, of which we both are, you and me. And what should a couple do about it? Because it really is a couple problem. Even if it's one person that made the mistake, it actually has a systemic ripple to the whole couple and family. So what should people do about this, Kat?
Great question. One of the first things that couples need to do is try to identify what their vulnerabilities are. And when I talk about vulnerabilities, I mean that there are certain things that the internet and new media kind of contribute to our lives that make our lives easier and more difficult. I mentioned approximation and that quality of the internet being able to get better and better at approximating real life. So one of the things that a licensed marriage and family therapist might do is to be able to evaluate what things that the computer is providing, or the internet or the new media is providing to that person who stepped out of the relationship that isn't being met in a relationship, and how do you construct those needs being met within the primary offline relationship. One of the other things that we also look at is this concept of accommodation. A lot of the research regarding internet usage suggests that people who are using the internet in some cases are able to be who they believe to be their real selves online and feel more constrained in their day-to-day life offline. The internet gives them an opportunity to be whoever they want to be, right? So that's the other thing that licensed marriage and family therapists can do. Explore whether or not that concept of accommodation, or this, being your real self online and not real offline, whether there's that disparity within the person who was engaging in behavior online, and how, again, those needs can be met, or how they can feel like they can be more themselves in the online or in the offline relationship. Marriage and family therapists will also probably take the couple through a process by which the betrayed partner gets to kind of express their sense of betrayal, and they can kind of reconstruct with the therapist the events that were occurring. Some research has pointed out that it's helpful for the betrayed partner to kind of know exactly the details. Other research has said, well, not so much. So it really depends on where the couple stands, whether or not the betrayed partner really needs to know the details of what occurred. There's generally a forgiveness process by which the person who participated in the activities does take some ownership and says, hey, I recognize that my actions kind of created an error of bad feelings in some way. And then you work with the couple to reconstruct the relationship. That's where we're going to tap in to redefining the roles, redefining the boundaries, getting a really solid couplehood, and kind of a new couplehood. I like to phrase it for my couples as this is your new relationship moving forward. Part of that, realistically, has to involve the internet. So how are we going to use the internet to be able to create connection and intimacy and maintain the passion that people have for one another, instead of the internet being a place where couples start to feel disconnected and pulling away from one another. So those are the general steps that a licensed MFT would take.
Thank you so much. Again, ending just like a marriage and family therapist would, seeing strength and health, as we do know that even in our darkest kind of ruts, if you're a committed couple and you get help, you can get yourself out of a jam, even if it is something like online infidelity or problems with technologies we've been talking about this hour. Thank you so much, Dr. Kat Hertlein, UNLV, kathertlein.com. Kat, because we have a lot of professionals listen to our show too, as well as the lay public, where can they find your book?
They can find actually my books from Amazon or from the Rutledge website. The last two that came out I think are awesome. They're called the Systemic Sex Therapy and the Clinician's Guide to Systemic Sex Therapy. Sure. And they really walk the clinician straight through the process of sex therapy from beginning to end.
Will I see you in Fort Worth in September?
You will see me in Fort Worth. I'm doing a workshop on this very topic, Internet infidelity.
I will be there. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eli.
Okay, we'll be back the second hour, relationships and technology on Let's Talk.